This was the nightmare of all nightmares. Hey, real quick before we start this video, a lot of you guys have been asking for team shirts. Finally, Autohaus has t-shirts, so it would really help out a lot if you supported the shop, got some merch, some shirts, stickers, support the media work, support me and my dog. Check out that merch store so I don't starve you guys. 1991 Turbo MR2 Turbo. Turbo. Also the coolest center caps I've seen in my life. That means you son of a... Alright, so as you can see with all the fender covers, this car is still a work in progress. In short, we were tasked with returning this car back to stock. I believe this originally had a Pepsi intake, the airbox, and then this ginormous resonator right here that covers basically 3/4 of the engine bay. All this stuff we put back. This car seldom gets driven, so yeah, a lot of fluids and minor services overdue on this car, including we're gonna do a complete coolant flush, which is an absolute nightmare on these vehicles. Valve cover was leaking, which actually leaked past and down on the intake manifold. So when we look above the car, you'll see what looked like an intake manifold leak was actually the valve covers leaking down this way and then down the intake manifold on the bottom of the runners and then down the engine block. And then also the nightmare of all nightmares, I took off the aftermarket turbo back exhaust and put on the factory downpipe and cat converters. This was the nightmare of all nightmares. I should have charged double the labor for this, but yeah, you guys probably know there's this like old wives' tales about how these are a nightmare to work on, and yeah, I completely underestimated this car. I've worked on NA versions before. This is the first turbo model I've worked on. Absolute nightmare. One way I can describe it, it's like European stuff where you're not just taking off a part. You have to take off 4 parts to take off that one part. I'll just give you an example. That downpipe, you're not just taking the downpipe off. AC belt, I had to move the AC compressor to the side. Depending on how much clearance you have, even the oil cooler may have to come off just to get the, I believe I had to do that to get the OEM downpipe back on. Fun stuff. Twin entry turbo, I definitely thought there was some sexual innuendo in that. But yeah, super clean car. Looks like it's got a aftermarket intercooler on the side plus a intercooler fan. And you can tell some of these charge pipes are aftermarket too. Factory Toyota turbo. Still got all the emission stuff. Check out the EGR valve. It's a tight fit in there.
That's what she said.
And again, super minty interior. This car looks like it has 188 on the clock. I really like that boost gauge. Really classy looking boost gauge. The owner says the tachometer is slow by a lot on this car. It looks like really common problem. There's 2 capacitors, I believe, that go bad, so I'm gonna remove the instrument cluster, take apart the tach, and then we're gonna remove and then solder in 2 new capacitors, get this tachometer reading correctly again. But yeah, super factory fresh. Even, yes sir, got that tape deck in there. Factory shifter. Again, another sexual innuendo piece right there. What does that look like? You tell me. Funny, very S2000-esque with the dual glove box. Yeah, I can't get over super plush leather seats compared to you guys who have ever seen or own a Mark IV Supra. The seats were super Spartan and this thing looks super plush. Check it out, factory Toyota glass. The owner tells me this is a very rare option. The rarest is actually a hard top or a slick top. Second rarest, the sunroof, and then of course the most common and also the most iconic is the T-tops. I just noticed right now, pretty cool, this bottom of the engine lid actually is a scoop right here. Same thing, a lot of really cool touches on this car, because if you notice this air intake, this is actually a real intake that feeds the air filter. Then same thing if we walk over to the other side. This is a real vent. I can see the bar and plates right there that really feeds the intercooler. So yeah, missed the days when the vents were really real on cars, right? Turbo, how many times we're gonna say turbo in this video. Yeah, good stuff. Why don't we lift up the car, take a look at what's underneath. Back to stock. So we took out the Fujitsu catback in favor of, again, the stock exhaust. Unfortunately, the Fujitsu catback extends all the way back here, which means you cannot run the California or the US spec second cat converter. So yeah, unfortunately can't run that Fujitsu catback legally, I guess. Yeah, resealed the oil pan. It's gonna be tough to see, but vacuum actuator similar to TVIS on a A86, but a lot of the excess oil we cleaned off already, but this used to be covered in oil leak residue, which just dripped down the block. There was actually a huge leak residue right here that went on the customer's floor. And part of that, I believe, was the oil pan in this corner, but majority of it, definitely the valve cover gasket. Yeah, our stock downpipe. After the downpipe from the turbo goes straight into the first catalytic converter, which is this giant monstrosity. And the fact that I can barely put the camera in there tells you almost expresses how difficult this guy was to shove back in. There's even 2 braces on the side of this monstrous cat converter. The turbo models came factory with an oil level sensor. These are very prone to breakage, very prone to failure, and guess what? When we took this off, it looked like this was broken already. So you can look on the forums. There's many ways to rig this guy to read full all the time, otherwise you'll get a warning light on the dash. Why didn't we replace this? Because this is $400 freaking for this piece. So yeah, both I and the owner agreed, not worth it. Yeah, super tidy car underneath. You can tell by these tires when the owner had more time, he actually used to track this car. Obviously apparent by some of the paint marks too. None of the steering and suspension components had any excessive player wear, which is a miracle because every single midship I've touched, including, for example, Lotus cars, these rear tie rods always take a beating and always get beat up. If you're familiar with Lotus, there's upgraded rear tie rods because the OEM ones are prone to literally breaking in half. The under trays are on my bench because we still need to do the coolant service and also like a final once over on the car. Super tidy underneath. Looks like still stock suspension, no lowering springs or anything, but got some cool braided lines. Radiator up front. All right, let's take a look at the front trunk, otherwise known as the Frunk. So again, normally there's a plastic cover here. We ordered all brand new clips from Toyota. The owner also said at some point this hood prop pulled out. So we got a brand new grommet from Toyota. There's actually a plastic piece that basically clips onto the bottom of this hood prop. You can't get that piece by itself. You have to buy the whole hood prop. So in the interim, this is working totally fine just with the fresh hood prop grommet in there. There's plastic pieces that cover all these parts in the front trunk. But yeah, we still got to do a coolant service on this guy. And I'll leave the service manual instructions right here and show you just how much of a nightmare this thing is. You can see the service hose. There should be the heater valve to undo. There's a bleeder on the radiator with a service hose, and basically you got to create this TP and bleed forever, cross your fingers, pray, do the hokey pokey, and pray that you get all the air out of the system in these guys. And then also wait like 2 hours for this thing to bleed. But yeah, regular coolant system service absolutely necessary. So yeah, that's a turbo. That's it for this 91 Turbo MR2. Questions, comments, want to see more customer review videos like this, leave something in the description below. Appreciate the support. Catch you guys next time.